Hello everybody, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft Season of Discovery boss fight. So, today Grand Theft Kodo, my guild, is taking on Prince Thunderaan, who was the world boss released in Phase 5 most recently, and he's had a bit of an update since his previous releases in Classic, I believe, and I believe he might have also been in the standard retail version way back when it was first released. So, there's a few different mechanics to pay attention to in this fight, and we actually think that this boss has been retuned or slightly changed since he first came out, as the first two times we killed him since his release were mega easy. We only really needed one tank, and we seemed to walk through it quite simply, to be completely honest. But this time we took a few attempts, and he was quite tricky. We had to switch. We were going with one tank to start with, and had to switch onto two due to his tank debuff, which we will cover shortly. And yeah, it was just he seems to have a lot more health as well, as we were concerned about DPS being an issue. But once we decided to take the boss fight a bit more seriously, we actually handled it quite well, I have to say. No one died on this attempt, so we were quite happy with that one. Okay, so there's a few different abilities that you have to pay attention to. Now, the main one for tanks that you need to really focus on is called Tendrils of Air, which is an ability that damages players in a cone in front of Prince Thunderaan, so whoever's tanking him, to make sure you're facing him away from melee and ranged. What it does is it knocks you back and also applies a debuff to you, which deals moderate nature damage over time, but it also applies a healing debuff effect. And it can stack as well, so if it stacks too high, healers won't be able to heal you, you'll be getting hit quite hard, and yeah, I think that was what killed our tanks on our first two attempts, and we were struggling with that mechanic after a while, which was why we had to switch to tanking it, so that our off-tank could tank the boss whilst the debuff was dropping off the main tank.
Watch your feet.
For the ranged and healers, and even the melee, need to pay attention to some of these mechanics. We've got a few different ones to deal with. First of all is Cyclonic Winds, which is, it's an ability that places a kind of damage over time effect on players that are nearby Prince Thunderaan, which deals moderate nature damage every second, and it lasts for about 5 or 6 seconds, I believe. It's basically a raid-wide AoE damage. I don't know if you can stand far enough away from the boss in order to avoid that mechanic, but we seem to be getting hit raid-wide with it almost every time, so it's just something that your healers have to pay attention to. Once you see Cyclonic Winds being announced, make sure that you're either popping some cooldowns or focusing more on AoE healing, as it will deal quite a lot of damage to pretty much your entire raid. Next is quite a serious one called Chain Lightning. If you notice, the best way to tell if you've got Chain Lightning targeted on you, obviously if you're using something like Deadly Boss Mods or any kind of raid announcement add-on, it'll tell you who's got Chain Lightning focused. But if you don't use anything like that, what you need to pay attention to is the blue rings underneath your character at their feet. You'll notice these blue rings, there's about 6 of them in total that kind of spread out from your character. That means you're the target of Chain Lightning, which deals quite a lot of damage when it hits you, but then it also jumps to other nearby players and increases its damage every time it jumps. Be very careful. If it jumps twice, it'll probably kill the person it jumps to. So if you have the blue rings under your feet and you notice it says Chain Lightning is on you, then just make sure you're away from other players. And also call out for your healers to, give you a bit of a heal to top you off so you don't get squashed. Next up we have a fairly easy ability to avoid called Lightning Cloud. Now this one can be a bit of a pain in the backside, as he does like to summon it on top of, well, everyone. He will place it on top of players who are kind of clumped together. You'll notice that in this fight I do have it near me a couple of times. You can kind of see the cloud, but I was using my Deadly Boss Mods add-on to basically tell me if I was stood in it to avoid standing in it. It doesn't do a huge amount of damage, but it's not something I'd recommend standing in for too long. If you're like me and you're healing, so you can see there I'm getting hit by Lightning Cloud, just taking a few steps to the right hand side just to avoid being stood inside it. You can kind of see the swirling cloud effect above you as well. But it is difficult to tell what its range is, so I'd definitely recommend taking a few steps away from it. It'll deal a little bit of damage when it first spawns, and then it will deal small amounts of constant damage to anyone stood underneath it, so yeah, just make sure you're paying attention to that and repositioning, and again trying to avoid people who might have Chain Lightning on them. And then finally, an ability that you won't really see in this fight, as we didn't ever trigger it, but there is one more ability called Squall, or Squall, however you want to pronounce it. It's basically just a raid wiping mechanic if no one stood within melee range of the boss, so if your tanks or your melee DPSs are too far away from the boss, he will do something called Squall, which is just a raid-wide massive AoE damage. And that is Prince Thunderaan. Really not that difficult. I really enjoy healing this fight just because it's a truckload of AoE damage to heal, and as an arcane mage I like throwing beacons out to everyone and then just standing there DPSing and getting nice big healing numbers out of it. So it's a pretty good fight. Like I said at the start, we do think that this fight has been tuned slightly since it was first released, as our first couple of kills on him didn't take this long and we didn't struggle as much as we did this time around. But it's a pretty good fight. I do enjoy taking this one on. Sadly, the item that I was here for didn't drop, and hopefully it will drop in future attempts. But that's pretty much everything there is for this fight. I will also try and get a Molten Core video done soon. We did do a Heat 2 run of Molten Core, which I will go through when we actually release that video, and hopefully we'll be getting that one out soon. But that's it for today. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will catch you in the next one.